Symbiotes are arguably some of the most horrifying creatures to be established in comic books. Not only are they unique in characterization, but the Clintars have a very specific aesthetic, makes them stand out in comparison to other fearsome creatures found in our favorite panels. So today, we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 scariest symbiotes. We'll be talking about symbiotes who are not only scary in terms of their actions or behavior, but also pretty darn petrifying to look at. So with that in mind, let's jump in. Starting us off at number 10, Venom. I sometimes feel a little bit bad about these symbiote lists. Venom, who's sort of the poster boy for the Clintar race, often ends up in the early numbers in our list. I mean, yeah, he's powerful, but compared to his offspring, thanks to the genetic rules of his race, he is the strongest Clintar on the block. And in terms of being the scariest, well, despite making one hell of an impression when he first hit the scene, beyond just being an alien costume, back in April of 1988 in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 299 and 300, he was utterly terrifying. These days, as an anti-hero, the character is arguably one of the more scarier looking superheroes of the Marvel Universe. But Venom and artist Todd McFarlane are largely to thank for the horrific aesthetic of the other Clintar characters, and all of the characters coming up on our list. The symbiotes have become utterly iconic and unmistakable in terms of appearance, and that's a legacy that continues to persevere in comics to this day. And at number 9, Hybrid. Hybrid ain't a pretty amalgamation, that's for sure. Hybrid is a combination of 4 of Venom's offspring: Agony, Phage, Lasher, and Riot. Having previously appeared in the Venom Lethal Protector series back in 1993, these symbiotes went through a bit of a rough time after they were defeated by Eddie Brock, and found themselves in the Vault, a prison for supervillains, being experimented on in a lab facility. After they had broken out of confinement, they fused together into a single symbiote and bonded with a host named Scott Washington, who was a guard at the Vault. They would later be defused, but would end up fusing once more during the Deadpool vs. Carnage series, defeating Carnage and then passing on from Deadpool to a dog that had been trained to bond with Lasher. Not the worst host one can get, that's for sure. And at number 8, Kroba. Kroba is likely the least known symbiote on our list, but just one look at it screams frightening. So Kroba is an entity that comes from the pits of darkness, naturally. It bonded with a scientist and drives him mad, causing him to go on a rampage of New York, which when you really think about it is unsurprisingly common in the Marvel Universe it seems. It's also one of the only symbiote characters to appear in the comics that doesn't have some sort of familial connection to Venom, and isn't one of his offspring, first appearing in Venom's Seed of Darkness in 1997. But despite its appearance, it went down in a pretty lackluster way, being defeated by Eddie Brock thanks to the Flash on his camera. In at number 7, Riot. Riot is one of the symbiotes who makes up one of our previous numbers, Hybrid, but he's arguably scarier on his own. The character who first appeared in Lethal Protector came to be after the Life Foundation removed multiple offspring seeds from Venom in hopes to use them as super soldiers. Riot, along with his siblings, were bonded to various mercenaries that worked for the Foundation, with his being Trevor Cole. Trevor was particularly volatile, described by his peers to be unhinged, thus making Riot a much more violent and vicious symbiote compared to his siblings, which is already saying a lot. Riot would later bond with a new host in hunting down Carnage, with a group formed by the government after being retrieved from his hybrid state, which would eventually lead him and his siblings into encountering Deadpool. Riot is also making his cinematic debut in this year's Venom movie, bonding with Riz Ahmed's Dr. Carlton Drake, who runs the Life Foundation. The character's origins will obviously be slightly altered, being with a different host, but since the Venom movie is removed from the symbiote's Spider-Man alien costume storyline origin, that should be no surprise. Up next at 6, the Venomsaurus Rex. What happens when a T-Rex bonds with a Clintar? This big fella. That's what. While some of you might be like, dinosaurs are cool. Consider how utterly horrific it would be to come face to face with not only a real-life dinosaur, but one with the bloodlust of a Clintar symbiote. Real-life dinosaur? Okay, sure, count me on board. But one that wants to eat my brains for sustenance? Yeah, might pass on that. There's not a whole lot to say about the Venomsaurus Rex, aside from the fact that it is a symbiote who bonded with a savage T-Rex, and it has made a handful of appearances in the Marvel Universe over the years, including in the Venomverse and in Old Man Logan. Moving on to our number 5 spot, Scream. Scream fits the bill as one of the scariest symbiotes for both being aesthetically chilling and straight up batshit crazy. For starters, Scream was another of the Venom offspring characters to first appear in Lethal Protector, but unlike her 4 other siblings, she wouldn't survive into the later hybrid plotlines. Rather, she was killed off in Venom Volume 1, Issue 15 in 2012, after Eddie Brock began to hunt down symbiotes. Brock trapped her by paralyzing her with a sonic emitter and then stabbed her multiple times in the head with a heated dagger. I mean, forget symbiotes, Eddie Brock should be at the top of this list. Dude gets gruesome at times. Anywho, Scream's host, Donna had a history of psychotic episodes prior to her becoming one of the Life Foundation's hosts. After bonding with Scream, she attacked them all in California and was initially defeated by Venom and Spider-Man thanks to a metabolic accelerator. The Life Foundation managed to recover her and her siblings though, and later she returned, killing the hosts of the other symbiotes with a powerful psychic ability, thanks to Donna's schizophrenia apparently, and then framed Eddie Brock for all of their murders, which pissed off her symbiote siblings quite a bit. Needless to say, she's slightly unhinged. Up next, number 4, Mania. Mania, also known as Maniac in later years, is one of the most vicious symbiotes to date. A clone of Venom, specifically cloned from Venom's tongue, this symbiote was initially created as a means of exterminating all life on Earth, but it refused to bond with any of the hosts that it was exposed to. Instead of bonding fully, Mania would bond and then brutally maul and murder each one of these potential hosts for fun. At one point, it comes into contact with a prospective host who is a prison inmate, who manages to reject the symbiote. So how does Mania react? By bonding with an elderly mental patient and then taunting the inmate about how he was raped in prison, and then proceeded to reenact the assault before murdering him. All in all, pretty f***ed up character, yeah? Mania would go on to mass murder a bunch of individuals before a new host by the name of Lee Price took over the symbiote and then reshaped it, calling themselves Maniac instead. Up next in our number 3 spot, Grendel. Grendel, compared to some of the other characters on this list, hasn't had a whole lot of panel time, but that doesn't make Grendel any less terrifying. So this creature is a dragon symbiote that was a servant of Null. More on Null later. Grendel would take on Eddie Brock's Venom and Miles Morales' Spider-Man in the 2018 Venom run, Volume 4. Grendel has the blood of multiple civilizations on his, I guess, teeth, not really hands. It ravaged societies during the earlier medieval period, including Norse soldiers, which caused Thor to trap it inside of a glacier in response. Flash forward to 1966. S.H.I.E.L.D. discovers Grendel and ran many an experiment on it, which ultimately led to a bunch of destruction by Grendel in Vietnam during the war. It would later be incapacitated and put to sleep until it was awakened by Null and unleashed on New York. See, there's a trend there with these symbiotes going after New York. To make matters worse, this symbiote dragon isn't affected by sonic waves or heat, and rather was defeated thanks to Thor's lightning and Spider-Man's Venom Blast, which caused it to destabilize and unravel into a giant amorphous mass. Man, I hate when I unravel into a giant amorphous mass. Not a good day. In at number 2, Null. Null may not look as scary as any of our previous numbers on this list initially, but it's more so his capabilities that make him utterly terrifying. Null is often considered as the symbiote god. He's the deity that created the Clintars, an origin that was crafted in that 2018 Venom run. And long story short, Null's existence predates that of the universes. Back when the Celestials had created the universe, Null had some serious beef with them, and fought against them with a living sword called the All Black, that was created from his shadow. He chopped off one of their heads and was cast back into the void by the other Celestials in retaliation. But Null used that severed Celestial head to forge a symbiote sword and symbiote armor, right from the eldritch darkness that he commanded, and set out on a mission to kill all of the other gods. When coming out of the void, he landed on a desolate planet, and created an army of symbiotes, who would later rebel against him. They imprisoned him in the core of their planet, which they would call Clintar, which is their word for cage. So if that isn't enough to vouch for why this dude is scary, I mean, he's a literal god, who has divine physiology, is self-sustaining. He's immortal and has lived for over 13.7 billion years, he can shapeshift, create life, and also wants to commit mass genocide. So yeah, not an overly pleasant being to encounter. Finally, in at number 1, Carnage. Carnage may not be able to compete with a god in terms of power, but it would be criminal to not give the symbiote the top spot on our list. He's by far the most terrifying, nefarious, and sinister of the symbiotes, and has the aesthetic to match. Carnage has one of the most interesting stories of the symbiotes in the Marvel Universe too. Eddie Brock had landed himself in prison at one point, and had the unfortunate experience of having an individual named Cletus Cassidy as his cellmate. Cassidy was a psychotic murderer, serving 11 life sentences at the time. Now at this point, it was believed that the Venom symbiote was dead, but turns out he was just incapacitated. It eventually rebonded with Eddie once more, allowing him to break out of prison. But without Eddie knowing, Venom had done something. It left behind one of its spawn in the prison, which ended up bonding with Cassidy, making him the 999th naturally born symbiote. Thus, Carnage was born, and he was much bigger and much badder than Venom. Cassidy, being such a ruthless and contemptuous killer, made Carnage even more so, and over a period of several months he would go on a killing spree, leaving the words "Carnage rules" in blood at the scenes of his crimes. Carnage has been a long-lasting character in the Venom mythos, an antagonist to the character always trying to kill his father since first appearing in Amazing Spider-Man issue 345 back in 1991. Alright, there we have it friends. Do you guys agree with our picks? Or do you think that there's other Clintars out there who are much more deserving of the top spots? And which ones give you the heebie-jeebies? Give us a shout in those comments below and let us know. If you dug this video, you know what to do. Hit that like button. And if you haven't already, why not hang out with us some more and subscribe? We'd love it if you stuck around. We also have a ton of other Venom videos just waiting for you to check them out. In the meantime though, thanks for watching everybody. I'll catch you on the next video.